Hello, everybody. Welcome to the JT Foxx Podcast Network. My name is JT Foxx, but today we have a very special breaking news. We have a Scientology whistleblower, and there's been a lot of things being said. Is Grant Cardone an alleged scammer? Is Grant Cardone running an alleged Ponzi scheme? Is Grant Cardone allegedly defrauding investors? Is Grant Cardone says who he is? I don't know. I don't know the guy. A lot of people have been talking, but we have an insider, a Scientologist whistleblower who knows them within the organization, has been doing some videos that have gone viral. And so I wanted to get down to the bottom of it so that I can ask good questions and then let you, the audience, decide as well. Aaron Smith-Levin is a successful real estate investor, so he understands the nature of real estate, understands the business. Aaron, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
All right. So just before we put this in context of you, you were basically grew up in the Church of Scientology. What that means is you were born into it. It's not like you were sold into it. You were, your family was, and as a result, you're born to it. So your perspective is very different, no different than hypothetically, I'm not making a comparison, but someone is born in a cult. And as a result, their parents were in the cult, the kids grew up in it, so they don't know any better. Would that be a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Now, I'm going to go straight to it. Is Scientology, in your opinion, a cult, or is this just a bunch of wackadoodles that, made up aliens blowing up in the theta, or is it just like every other religion?
I think it's both of those things. It's a cult and it's a bunch of wackadoodles believing in space aliens that were blown up in volcanoes. But, I try to, the content that I put out on my channel, YouTube channel, Growing Up in Scientology, I try to stay away from just pure ridicule, and I try to educate people on the subject in a way that if you were still in Scientology and you started to wander onto the internet to explore some stuff and you found my content, that you would go, instead of being offended and turned off by my content, that you would go, oh shit, this guy actually really knows what he's talking about. And he's actually being pretty fair. But even while being fair, I will say Scientology is without question a cult. I usually wouldn't call them wackadoodles, but it's without question a cult. It destroys families. It bankrupts its members. And that's what I have to say about that.
What's the appeal? What's the appeal of Scientology? Because from what I understand, the more you pay, the more courses you buy, the higher you go up, and then you can be OT level, Grand Poobah Master, right? And you floating in the universe of magical unicorns and blowing up in volcanoes, right? So is that the appeal? Is that it's the religion that buys into that you can buy into in a way, as opposed to like I'm Roman Catholic and I just have to sit there and wait for my communion and then leave? Is that the appeal, or what's the appeal?
The appeal is the self-empowerment message, methodology, approach to solving problems that exist within Scientology. So I'm no expert on Christianity, but I think I can at least say in Christianity, you're putting all power in God and Christ. In Scientology, you're putting all power in yourself. Scientologists don't believe in a higher power, a God, a supreme being. They sure as hell don't believe in Jesus or Moses or Muhammad. And the approach that Scientology takes is you yourself are, in fact, natively godlike in your power and potential. And Scientology helps you learn about what caused you to fall away from that power and eternal. Like Scientologists believe we're all like 76 trillion years old, but we've fallen, and we used to have memories of that whole time span. But for a variety of reasons, we have our memories wiped after each lifetime, and we're stuck in these physical bodies, and we're stuck on Earth, and we're stuck in this physical universe. And Scientology can free you from that trap, just like being woken up from the Matrix. And Scientology's approach to life is basically everything is you are the cause of everything. I'm the cause of everything, even that happens to you. And you're the cause of everything that happens to me. Don't think about it too hard because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it does approach it from the viewpoint of you are responsible for everything. You're the cause of everything. But that also means that you are able to improve anything as long as you have the right Scientology tools. And that can be very self-empowering, particularly at the lower levels. Maybe someone doesn't have a lot of direction in life. They don't know how they're ever going to improve their lot in life. And Scientology comes along and says, you have the power and we can give you the tools. Now, that doesn't sound like religion, does it? That sounds like self-help. self-betterment, self-improvement, executive coaching, whatever you want to call it, doesn't sound like religion. And yet when you hear any Scientologist talk about Scientology, including Grant Cardone, which is why I go after him the way that I do, he tries to poo-poo all of the trillions of years and the thetans and the volcanoes and shit. And he's like, hey, I just care about yesterday and tomorrow and taking care of my kids and my family and paying my bills. And it's like, yeah, but that's not religion. You don't you don't go to a church to learn how to pay your bills and get your money right. You got to get your money right. So the appeal of Scientology is the self-empowerment aspect. That's how I would answer that.
So why is it considered a religion, the government, that's tax exempt status as well? Or is it just there's a lot of other religions that are, because obviously if it is a cult, I'm sure David Koresh didn't get the tax benefits, the religious tax benefits too. So why is it that it's considered tax exempt?
So I'll answer the question first from how a Scientologist would answer it, and then I'll answer it from what happened with the IRS. A Scientologist would say, we genuinely believe that we are all immortal spiritual beings. Okay, well, right there, you're talking about something that's at least not talking about the physical. We're immortal spiritual beings, and we do genuinely believe that the process of Scientology auditing will help you regain your native spiritual power and potential. Now, aside from the fact that you didn't hear anybody say God in that description, if you remove the requirement to have a God, if you remove that as a requirement to be a religion, someone could make a good argument that Scientology legally meets the definition of a religion. The IRS, however, had already revoked Scientology's religious status when they found out L. Ron Hubbard was just enriching himself through the bank accounts of Scientology. Now, in 1992, 1993, Scientology basically filed 2,000 lawsuits against the IRS, and not just the organization, 2,000 individual IRS agents. And they spent hundreds of millions of dollars just basically suing the hell out of everyone in the IRS that they could. And it basically forced the IRS to come to the table and say, look, if we start this process of giving you guys your tax exemption back, can you make these lawsuits go away? And Scientology said, like a faucet. So Scientology's got to be the only organization in the history of the United States who literally strong-armed the IRS. And it is definitely, the fact that they were able to accomplish that has definitely made any bureaucrats in government today think more than twice about trying to do something about Scientology's fraudulent and abusive and criminal behavior. But I do believe that day is coming. I genuinely do.
So let me ask you a question. Is Grant Cardone a Scientologist?
100%. I mean, he's been a Scientologist for decades. That's how I know Grant Cardone. I don't know Grant Cardone because he's a sales guy or because he's internet famous. I know him from Scientology. When I was still working for Scientology out in Los Angeles, Grant Cardone was a Scientology public, and he was an unbearable blowhard back then. The only reason
what do you mean by unbearable? What do you mean by unbearable blowhard?
Just a guy who you meet him for the first time, and in 5 or 10 minutes, he's already told you how much money he carries around in his pocket. Like, who the fuck does that? It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's obnoxious. Even for a Scientologist, it's obnoxious. And the only reason people really put up with him and give him any deference at all is because he's publicly well known and he's flashy and he has money. And if you're a Scientology staff member, everyone's a mark to some degree or another. If someone's got money, there's a lot of Scientology staff members whose weekly job is just to raise as much money as possible. So if you've got someone like Grant Cardone, one of the best ways to get him to give you money the next time he asks is to be really, really nice to him and inflate his ego and blow smoke up his ass all the time. So I think that's another thing that people like Grant Cardone find appealing about Scientology is they're now in an ecosystem where the whole thing is designed to inflate their ego about how great they are, how competent they are, how smart they are, how successful they are. Even the 10X, like 10X. Scientology's got a thing about 5.4X. L. Ron Hubbard put out a policy. All orgs need 5.4X, 5.4X. It's a very common thing, 5.4X. So Grant was basically, it's almost like, what's better than 8-minute abs? 7-minute abs.
Yeah.
So he's like
10X,
5.4X.
10X it. What does it mean? 10X it. No, but
he's
really,
like,
what does it mean? 10X. But he has been very blatant on his social media of actually promoting people to come So one would argue, is he recruiting for Scientologists and his clients are oblivious to this?
He is recruiting for Scientology. There's even a guy I kind of tease on my channel here locally. His name's Tampa Brad. He's a former West Point military academy graduate, and he got into Scientology through Grant Cardone, and he's got this little YouTube channel where he talks about his journey into Scientology. So I do like reaction videos to his videos, and it's really entertaining. But this is just an example of a young millennial who comes from a family with money, who was failing in many ways in life. He got dishonorably discharged from the military after graduating from West Point. That seems like it's a pretty hard thing to do. But then he sees Grant Cardone and he goes, I want to be like that. I want to get my money right. I want to drive a Rolls Royce and have a sort of hot wife and a jet, you know. And so the way he fraudulently markets himself, even this thing of fraudulently calling himself a billionaire, it's so horseshit. Anyone who knows anything about
by the way, is he a billionaire?
No, not a chance. But like anyone who understands finance knows it. What you see right in front of you shows no indications that this guy has had any opportunity to accumulate $1 billion of net worth. You notice how Grant, especially people who understand finance, you notice how Grant never talks about profit, ever. He never talks about margins. He only talks about gross revenues. What kind of business person only thinks in terms of gross revenues? You know, and that only appeals to people who are too stupid to recognize that there's a reason he's only talking about.
Isn't it one of his teaching? Only worry about the top line, not the bottom line.
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I mean,
let's go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the advice that he gives out is so obviously fraudulent. The various stories that he tells have so many holes in them. Like everything about the guy is
give me an example of a story that has a hole. Or before we do that, let's go back. Yeah, the jet, you're saying? Yeah, okay. So the jet is a big part of his marketing, I believe, right? Every post humanly possible has a jet. So, I mean, what's fraudulent about the jet?
Just the story that he tells. Like, first of all, okay, here's an example. He goes, my accountant, and he says he's had this accountant for 30 years or 20 or 30 years. My accountant called me, he said, we've got a giant tax bill. Okay, the first question, do you not understand tax planning? Like, who fucked up that you had what sounds like a $30 million tax bill? Like, did you just start making money this year for the first time? Right off the bat, it doesn't make sense. Then you go, wait, 30 years ago, you were nothing, but today you claim to be a billionaire. You've got the same accountant handling your billionaire level finances as you did 30 years ago when you had nothing. That doesn't make any sense. Then he goes, hey, is there anything we can do about this tax bill? And the accountant says, I've looked at everything. There's nothing we can do. Well, guess who understands more about accounting and taxes? The accountant understands more about all this than Grant does. Okay, so Grant dismisses the advice of his 30-year accountant and is like, we should buy a jet. You think no one thought of that? Like Grant Cardone's the first one who thought of that. Okay, and then he goes on, he calls Gulfstream. Oh, they don't have any jets. It's going to take a year or two. And then he tells this guy, okay, wire him the full amount. Wire him the full amount. And then he calls him, hey, check your accounts. And he goes, Gulfstream said, oh, wow, man. No one's ever done that before. No one's ever wired the full amount, bro. And I go, okay. So Gulfstream's dealing with the wealthiest 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 individuals on the entire planet, some of whom have multiple jets, some of whom are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And no one has ever paid for a jet in full before. It's such a small, minor point. And you go, yeah, but that's the thing. Grant's always lying about the things that don't even make a difference in a story. He's just constantly lying. He's just telling a story that sounds good. And that's his whole business model. Just tell a story that sounds good.
So I just want to do the math here for a second. So he's in real estate, right? I'm in real estate too. So let's just assume that a big tax bill, assume that he sold a property, right? That's the assumption would be because obviously earned income would not be tax deductible for a jet. I mean, that wouldn't work, but let's just assume we have properties, right? So I'm trying to think, let's say, and he says the jet was it $55 million, $60 million, direct check with them. So let's say there's a 20% tax bill, right? Because it'd be real estate long-term and you didn't 1031 to another asset. I would think that if you have $100 million, $180 million or this, that you would put it into another property. So if I take 20% of 180, that's $36 million, right? And the jet was actually 55. So the whole thing was a write-off. So in theory, it'd be like $220 million in profit that he got, which that is insane. And he took all that profit and bought it to a jet. Does that sound correct that he made $220 million in order to get a $60 million write-off, or is the story just a complete lie?
There's no part of the story that makes sense. And then he turned around and got a new plane like 2 years later. And it's like, there's no way he owns these jets outright. He's probably buying his jets the same way he buys his properties, which is a 10-year interest-only variable interest loans. Like, there's no reason to invest your money with Grant Cardone unless you want to help him make his monthly payments on his jet, because that's all you're doing is putting your money into his pocket.
Now, the real estate market has been very hot, and I believe in the beginning of the pandemic, he said he was in bankruptcy when things were hard. I believe it was like May 2020. Stopped distribution and then said, haha, it's a joke. And obviously when the real estate market opened up, Florida and Texas, some of the locations were completely on fire. Some places that you live there as well. And now the market is doing very, very well, extremely well, right? And so and he has bought a tremendous amount of properties in the hottest markets in the United States. In theory, I would assume that it's market value based on the numbers, because no one in Texas or Florida is going to give a good deal of an A-class property in the hottest market in the country, right? When you have a good asset, So let me give you a question. How is it black?
I mean, I would argue he's not even paying. Market value is subjective. I would agree he's overpaying. Now, you might argue, well, there's no such thing as overpaying. But there's no way he's getting anything below market value. If anything,
so let me ask you a question. Is it true, alleged, and I don't know this, that he is actually buying the property the day before, a few days before, a few weeks before, and reselling it to the fund? Is that happening?
Yeah, he's front running his own investors on. Hold on.
This is actually true. He is actually buying the property, right, and selling it. So it's basically, if I buy a phone at a discount and then I want to sell, I take the phone, right? I buy the phone for $200, and then I'm going to go to my clients and say, look, we're going to buy this at $400 and it's a great deal. And I just pocketed the money. Is that what's happening? So why not buy the property at $200? Hey, investors, let's buy this at $200 so everybody profits. But you're saying he's buying at $400. How is that possible?
The only way, I don't know how it's legal. I know how it's possible. I don't know how it's legal. This was detailed in a complaint for a class action lawsuit that was filed against Grant, because everyone who invests with Grant signs these apparently airtight arbitration agreements. Grant was successfully able to get the lawsuit out of the courts and into arbitration, so that no one ever heard about what happened to it. Anything was, I'm sure any settlement was confidential, because that's how the arbitration agreement usually works. Mm-hmm. And but the complaint that had been filed in the class action lawsuit was pretty clear about how Grant is front running his own investors, and that he doesn't have an incentive to buy the properties, or I should say, to sell the properties to his investors at market rate. Like, he personally buys the property with other investors that are not his fund investors, just friends or whatever. He buys the property. He then sells the property to the fund, but he has no incentive his incentive is actually to sell that for the highest amount possible, because he gets a 1%. He gets a 1% transaction fee on that.
So hold on. So he takes the spread, which hurts the investor, and then once he does, he'll take a 1% acquisition fee on top of that, and then a 1% management fee and a 1%. That's like quadruple dipping. Yeah.
No, and then when he sells the property down the road, now in some interviews, Grant says, "Oh, we're never going to sell. We're never going to sell." But he's incentivized to sell, because he gets like 30 or 35% of the profit on the sale.
Well, that would be normal though. But I think it's 20% now, 20-80 split. That would be normal, right? Like, he put the deal together, gets the 20%. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, the early ones, I think, were like 35, 65, or 70, 30. But now with the way the returns are, I believe it's 80-20, but I could be wrong.
It could be on more recent, if he's opening new funds, that the deal structure is different. But the deal structure, at least as was described in the class action lawsuit complaint, it was like 35% of the profits. And I mean, that's more than a hedge fund manager is taking. Now, look, I don't claim to have a lot of experience with real estate syndication. Maybe that's normal for the syndication space. I don't know. I've never invested in a
Let
syndicate.
me, so let me ask you, is it no, I mean, I would never like buy it and sell it. To me, it's against, I would just find so wrong. I would want to pass on, like I have many times, pass on the savings to my client. It just seems like self-dealing in a way. And I'm sure it's in the paperwork, but I'm sure people don't even know about it, right? I mean, do people know about it? I know you talk to a lot of people, and do they know about this? And are they outraged when they know?
They don't know about it, since he's targeting these young, unaccredited millennial investors. Oh. And that to me is what's so obvious about his shtick, trying to be Mr. Cool Guy on social media, trying to raise investment money while you're making posts from your jet on Instagram is such a transparently, I mean, maybe fraud is a legally sensitive word to use. It's so obviously a ruse to take money from people who don't know any better, who don't know that all they're doing is paying for your jet payments, really. I mean, 4% a year? Who gives a shit about 4% a year? The amount of risk involved in real estate investing does not justify putting your money with Grant Cardone for a 4% a year. And he's already cutting those distributions, as we know.
Hold on.
He's already cutting those distributions.
We are in a hot market right now. Obviously, the apartment is hot, even though if you don't buy them correctly, you get hurt. Hold on. What do you mean he's cutting distribution? The market is on fire for those of us who are in the multi-units. So because rents are going up. Hold on. What do you mean by he's cutting distributions?
Yeah, he's already cutting distributions. He's complaining that the interest expenses are going up, which means, and look, I don't make a habit of studying all the paperwork he gives to his investors, but I never would have dreamed that Grant was taking out variable interest loans on multi-$100-million properties. I knew he was taking out interest-only loans. I didn't know he was taking about variable interest loans.
This is a colossal breaking news. This guy at the hottest class of asset properties, right, is now cutting his distribution, which is already at 4%, and using interest rates and market conditions when some of your properties you've owned for a long time as well. This just means that there is no cash flow, and these funds are in trouble. But yet he's still going around in the jet and the houses and all that stuff. So why did he cut the distribution and didn't cut the jet? And did he cut his fees on top of that too? This is, people need these distributions. They were told they were getting distributions every month, and people are having a hard time, especially these unaccredited investors. How are they not going to be impacted by this, by the fact that they're expecting this money to come in every month because they gave them their hard-earned money, especially unaccredited one? How is this not going to hurt people?
Well, they're the only ones that are going to get hurt. Grant's not going to get hurt. His deals are written in a way where he gets paid first and he gets paid deferred if necessary. So Grant's the one guy in the entire deal who doesn't lose his fees. Even if he doesn't get them today because there's not enough cash flow, he can take it later when the cash flow reappears. Grant gets paid before his investors, which is why I just don't know why anyone would ever want to give money to this guy.
So let me ask you a question. So from the FTC and the SEC perspective, right? You have a guy who's allegedly saying he's a billionaire. And I have to imagine with his type of personality, very similar to Trump in a way, and Trump did this, where he would basically call Forbes and say, hey, I'm a billionaire, right? And so that, look at me, here's everything I have. And then Forbes would be like, newest billionaire, right? And be like, look, I'm a billionaire, right? The little article, right? Which would be a lot of credibility, Forbes 400. I mean, President Trump did it when he was, there, because there is branding to say you're on the Forbes 400 is a dream. There's nothing about Forbes that he is a billionaire. And so if people are watching this and they're like, hold on, he said he's a billionaire, that's why I invested, he's successful in real estate. How is this not illegal? How is this not illegal or in violation of raising capital or marketing practices? Or is it okay?
I just don't know how the FTC views something like that. There was even one thing where Grant made some post on social media that had to do with promising a certain level of returns. And the regulator basically made a decision that no one could really possibly take a social media post seriously as an honest guarantee. So it's possible that it's a gray area that he gets away with. I just don't really know how the regulators look at it.
Well, I mean, if I sued or filed a complaint, right? If I sued or filed a complaint, I'd be like, you know, I assume this person was a billionaire. They're not in a court of law. I can't imagine that that's, you know, because if you lie about one thing, here's the thing too. If you lie about one thing, isn't it you lie about everything, really?
Well, and that's the thing. He lies about the big things. He lies about the small things. He's just constantly lying.
Well, let me ask you a question. He says no one should own a house, right? And that was his shtick for a while. And it turns out and allegedly that his Miami condo was actually owned by an LLC that he owns, but he bought it and it's LLC, but even though it may not be on his personal name, he bought, I believe, another house in Florida, like for 25 million, and bought another house in California for 40 million. With what funds, I don't know. But here's a person who says you should not buy, and he's got 3 of them. So why would someone say that? Why would someone say don't be a homeowner, own 3? And then and I believe he'd say, I think there was something, correct me if I'm wrong. Billionaires don't buy homes, which is crazy because they do. They don't want to rent. Billionaires don't rent. So what purpose does that serve to say that?
I think the fact that he says that speaks to the audience he's intending to listen to him, which is someone who's so unknowledgeable. Someone, first of all, who's not a homeowner, because he's not necessarily telling you to sell your home and give him your money. He's saying that money that you're saving up to buy a home, give it to me instead. It's honestly one of the most destructive pieces of advice that you can give to someone in the lower to middle class, income strata. Buying and owning a homestead single family home is one of the #1 ways to accumulate wealth for people in the lower income strata. Yeah. The tax benefits are incredible.
Married is 500,000, 250 as single. That's a lot of money not to pay taxes.
Tax-free money.
Right.
I mean, and Grant's out there just 2 days ago, 1 or 2 days ago, telling people to cash in their retirement accounts, take a tax hit, and then give your money to him to invest in a real estate fund. I mean, the guy really.
Hold on, invest in a fund that is not paying out maximum distribution. So how could you not do well, but then trying to raise capital? I don't understand. How's that even possible?
I honestly don't know how it's possible. But also, back to the homeowner thing. Grant made a $10 million profit selling his home in Los Angeles, and he used that seed money, depending on which story you believe, to start Cardone Capital. So the way he ended up getting the first seed money was literally from the benefits he experienced from buying and holding a single family home, which is the exact thing he's telling everyone else not to do. He's telling everyone else not to do the thing that he already know works and that works for him. Except he's got to tell people not to do that because he wants those people to give him money instead. I mean, you like to call him Fluffy. I think the other people are going to be calling him Fluffy as all of his future cellmates in the Miami federal prison camp when he gets there one day.
So we'll talk about stories, right? There's a couple things, and allegedly, for example, that he had an event with 34,000 people at Marlins Park, right? And what people have said to me is Marlin Park, obviously the whole backside was covered and the whole event wasn't full, and there was only 2,000 on there. So maybe there was 12,000, which, by the way, is very impressive to have 12,000 people in a baseball stadium for an event, or 10, 12, however number is, but it's not 34. So why say 34,000 when the thing fits 34,000 and the whole backside is covered and it wasn't full? Like, why would people, like, what's the purpose of saying that?
I think Grant's whole brand is, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Trump because Trump kind of does the same stuff. His whole brand is just to paint himself like everything he touches turns to gold. Everything he touches is successful. In the interview that he did with Jordan Belfort was calling him out on the conference business. He goes, yeah, but that doesn't make money for you, right? Conferences don't make money. Those are loss leaders. And Grant's like, maybe in your world they don't make money. In my world they do. In my world they do. And that Jordan was like, oh, fuck this guy.
Yeah. So what about the story of Bob? He tells a story, and this story's been repeated, that someone came in and said, a billionaire comes in and says, I'm going to give you $20 million, right? And he gave the $20 million. And the story is a staff member comes after and says, okay, I'd like to do due diligence, which I imagine, and I've invested, literally over 52 million plus in some of my clients. And if I gave anybody, whether it's 100,000 or 5 million or 10 million, I'd want to do due diligence, right? That's just normally something that is normal to do. And the story goes to him and says, how dare you ask me questions? And I return the billionaire to to return the money to the billionaire and say, I don't need it as well. Is this a true story? And do you know who this Bob individual is? And is that even a real name?
Yeah, Bob Duggan is the wealthiest Scientologist that there is.
Oh,
I think
wow.
the company,
So he's a billionaire Scientologist.
yeah, he's the only billionaire Scientologist. I promise you, if Grant Cardone was a billionaire, Scientologists would know about it, not just social media would know about it. Bob Duggan is an actual billionaire. He's a Scientologist. He's made his money in the pharmaceutical industry. He ran a company called Pharmacyclics that went public. Less than $2, more than $1 billion. And Grant was basically riding this guy's coattails. If Grant has received any benefits business-wise from Scientology, it's from the networking effect of having met some ultra-wealthy Scientologists in Los Angeles and managed to gain their confidence, which is something Grant seems to be good at, is playing that confidence game with people. So Grant tells this story of turning away Bob's money. And I was really blown away that he even said the guy's name, because that means Bob knows he's talking about Bob. He should have just kept it anonymous. He tells this story as if it somehow reflects positively on Grant, that Grant is so secure in his business, he's got his money right, that he doesn't need this guy's money. But again, anyone who's thinking about things rationally would go, why in the hell would you return $20 million just because somebody wanted to do some diligence and have a little bit of oversight? That doesn't reflect well on Grant. It shows that there's stuff Grant didn't want the guy to see. But Grant thinks
or maybe they saw something.
Ass.
Is it true, allegedly, that they may have seen something that scared them and they wanted the money back, that he didn't give it back? Because we haven't heard from Bob's story. There could have been, here's a billionaire, his people look at due diligence, no different than a financial auditing firm. And they're like, oh, red flag here. They want the money back. He spins it that it's not money. So then you have a legitimate billionaire who's basically pulling his money out. And so now let's turn over to unaccredited investors because they won't read the documents and they're just going to be enthralled by the emotion, the jets, the cars, right? And so could that be a version of the true version of the story?
I mean, it's hard to know what the true version of the story is because Grant never tells a true story. But what I do know is that Grant and Bob did have a falling out. And so it's almost like, did Bob really give Grant the full amount? Did Grant really never put that money in the bank? Because the way Grant tells the story, he just left a $20 million check sitting on his desk for a week. And it's like, so you left a $20 million check just undeposited for a week, but you're begging millennials on Facebook for real estate investments. The guy's just so full of shit. But he and Bob did have a falling out. And whether this money issue, this story that Grant tells, is a result of the falling out, or whether the falling out was a result of whatever Bob found in Grant's business dealings, there's no way to know. Because when words come out of Grant's mouth, there's the only thing you do know is that whatever he's saying, the truth is some different version of that.
So there are people that are probably fans of his. They're going to watch this and call you a hater, saying you're just trying to. And then there are people who absolutely hate him, who is going to say, yes, right? They'll be excited by finding these things out, so someone that's watching in the middle that is undecided whether to invest or pull their money out or do further due diligence on the part, what would you say? Because you said a lot of things here today, and a lot of things I'm learning I didn't even know. So someone that's in the middle, because obviously you're super intelligent, there's no doubt you're very well spoken. What do you say to the person that's in the middle right now who doesn't know anything or considering? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First of all, I'm not a hater. I'm not down on the wealthy. I'm not down on the ultra wealthy. I mean, in my hedge fund research business, I work for hedge fund billionaires. I wish I were a billionaire. I hope to be one day.
You can if you say it. It doesn't matter. Everyone's a billionaire now. Everyone's a nine. Yeah, everyone's successful.
I'll be on my way to the top of Wealth Mountain. Who the fuck talks like that? You're going to climb Wealth Mountain. Like, that's not how people who understand finance talk about finance. I would say I'm not a hater. I don't hate the game. But you have to look at this player and go, this guy is playing dirty. I mean, there's just, to a certain degree, you can't reason someone out of a belief they weren't reasoned into to begin with. And to an investor who looks at Grant Cardone and looks at his flashiness and looks at and hears what he has to say and goes, that sounds right. They weren't exactly reasoned into that belief, it's very hard to reason them out of it. But I would just say, open your eyes, man. Just even a hedge fund, you're given a maybe at most a 2% management fee and a 20% cut of the profits. I mean, Grant's front running you on deals. He's pocketing the spread. He's selling properties to you for overpriced. He's taking an acquisition fee. He's cutting your distributions. He's taking interest only loans. I mean, the guy's business model is set to collapse. If you're investing with Grant Cardone, you should explore getting your money out. But here's the thing, you can't. His contracts are pretty airtight. And then you've got the arbitration agreements. So you're tied up in Grant Cardone's world. But if you've already given him some money,
so with advice of people that are watching, what should they do? You've brought up things that they may not have known. Now they know. What should people do that are watching? And how does it all end? You think about it 3 to 5 years from now, put yourself in the future. How does it all end?
I think Grant probably ends up being just the latest in the string of Scientologists who lose billions of dollars for investors in Ponzi schemes. I don't know that his real estate ventures are straight up Ponzi schemes, but I think what he's doing is probably illegal in a variety of ways that the regulators will crack down on eventually. Wow. And he'll just be the latest Scientologist fraudster in a federal prison camp. And short of that, maybe he just ends up on American Greed. Who knows? But really, stop giving Grant your money, guys. You're better off just putting it into an ETF.
And also, what would you recommend people that are currently in it right now that may be scared? I know a lot of people have reached out to you from some solutions, providing you information, and you can watch your YouTube channel as you describe many of them as well. I'm just listening here, and what I'm learning is from the research that you have done and others that you're working out. So what should people that have money do?
If you've already got money with Grant, I mean, you've only got two options: ride the wave or contact an attorney. That's really all you can do. But for the love of God, stop giving him more money. It's just, you're throwing it down the drain. You're making his jet payments for him.
Wow. This has been absolutely surprised. I didn't think that I would know as much as I just found out here today. And I'm almost taken back. And I hope that those who invested and those who have purchased programs, that they're the ones that obviously need to be protected. And there's a lot of people in this time, we're about to go through an economic downturn and people are already struggling, high inflation like that. And these are people that need money. And, before I would cut any distribution, I'd sell the jet, the cars, and everything there is to know to make these people who trusted me whole. And that's the right thing to do as well. Aaron, what's the name of your YouTube channel or website? And I know I'll put the link in the comment as well. Thank you for giving us this interview as well. I've learned tremendously about there's always two sides to a story. But I think from what I understand, you've seen documents, you've seen people, you've talked to people, and you were in it. So you have a very insider whistleblower perspective in all of this as well. So, I'm kind of shocked a little bit here. I'm taken back. So what's the name of your website? And I'll put the link to your YouTube channel in the comments.
Sure. Anyone can just go to Growing Up in Scientology on YouTube and you'll find me.
Growing Up in Scientology. That is Aaron. The man is, you can watch his other videos where I believe he goes much more in detail as well. I wanted to ask him tough questions in an inquisitive way to find out as well, as I had heard a lot of things, but they're always alleged. But to hear some of the things I'm hearing today, I'm just praying for everyone investing that it does work out, that you do make money as well. But prayer sometimes is not good enough as well. That's it for today. Welcome. If you'd like to basically listen to other interviews with Pacino, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, some of the world's most successful people, the link is there. Like to do business with me, the link is there as well. But in any situation with anybody, do due diligence and so do due diligence. And please, everyone, be careful. Not just here, everywhere as well. You saw a lot of EFT rug pulls. You saw a lot of cryptos go down to zero, and a lot of people got away with a lot of things. A lot of people lost a lot of money because they put faith in an individual as well. And for those who have these types of funds or things like that, always put the client first, right? And so if they're not making money, you should give them your share, and you didn't make any money, but you live another day as well. All you have is your name, your brand, and your credibility as well. And those are the right way to do business. Thank you for being on. We'll see everybody next time. And please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want more content like this as well. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.